welcome everybody to Deep Listening with Aiko and Aisha. It's good to be here with you, Aiko. Yeah.
Hi.
Hey. I found this parable. Last week or last time we kind of riffed off of Aesop's fable, the North Wind and the Sun, and I saw another little parable that kind of was a jump off place of that, and in our earlier conversation around metaphor. And so I thought I'd read that to our audience, and maybe you and I can discuss it a little bit.
Sounds good.
So this wisdom tale comes from a book called Wisdom Tales from Around the World by H. Forrest, publishers Little Rock, August House. So it's a short little parable. The title, Naked Truth and Parable. Naked Truth walked down the street one day. People turned their eyes away. Parable arrived, draped in decoration. People greeted Parable with celebration. Naked Truth sat alone, sad and untired. Why are you so miserable? Parable inquired. Naked Truth replied, I'm not welcome anymore. No one wants to see me. They chase me from their door. It is hard to look at Naked Truth, Parable explained. Let me dress you up a bit. Your welcome will be gained. Parable dressed Naked Truth in stories, fine attire, with metaphor, poignant prose, and plots to inspire. With laughter and tears and adventure to unveil, together they went forth to spin a tale. People opened their doors and served them their best. Naked Truth, dressed in story, was a welcome guest. Anyway, that's it. But I was just wondering, what do you think about that story, given the previous conversations we've had about the power of story and metaphor, and that would be an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah. Well, so just so the listeners know that I actually listened to this parable, or I read it. Aisha sent it to me like a week ago or something, right? And it was interesting how, immediately I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a great parable, a great story. But I had this, like, the first thing I felt was, I don't know, it just felt like this pain, hurt towards Naked Truth. And I guess it's because I felt like I kind of put myself in the Naked Truth's shoe, right? Sometimes people don't want to listen because I'm telling the naked truth. And I realize, oh, nobody wants to hear me, And I guess I felt those moments of, people don't want to listen to me.
Right.
And then when the parable comes and suggest the naked truth with some decorative stuff, right? And then I felt like, oh, just like this kind of a heartwarming feeling, like there was somebody there who understood that I had things to say, but look, people don't want to always hear the truth, right? So let's just like decorate it with stories and metaphors and things like that, which is so powerful, right? Like we talked about that in the last podcast, that stories and metaphors, it's powerful because they kind of live in people's body,
right,
in their in their nervous system kind of thing. And so when I first read it, I had all kinds of different thoughts about it. And
Yeah,
And
I mean, when you say live inside their bodies, I mean, you want to say more about that? Because I don't know if I understand that.
yeah, so I think when we talked about that in the podcast last time, we had that story of the sun and the wind, and I was telling you how I grew up with that story,
Right, right.
and throughout my life, it would just sort of surface, and then it's like, oh, that's like a, whatever that was happening at that time. It's like, oh, I can just totally remember that story, and then that's a great, that story is a metaphor to this, whatever is happening, and it just feels like it kind of lives in me because the stories are not just words, right? Like as you listen to the story, you feel the sensation of this warmth of the sun, or the powerful cold wind. And it, like, I can feel it in the body. So when that story talked about how the sun just gently warmed this man with a cloak,
Mhm.
I feel it like in my body, So when somebody, like, let's say if I went to see a doctor, which I have this sort of a hospital phobia or doctor phobia. So I go there, and then if a doctor is forceful and say, you have this and you got to take this and this and this, and that just to me is just like cold, and like, wow, that's like cold wind, But when a doctor is so trying to connect with me and then gives out this warmth, I just picture, the sun warming me and then opening me up, and that's like in the body, right? It's not just this kind of a intellectual.
Right.
So that's, I guess, what I mean by, stories kind of live in people's
Yeah.
bodies.
Well, that's interesting. Then if we think about the power of metaphor, or, you said something that really struck me last time when we were talking off camera, which was that, we say the metaphor kind of illuminates the truth, but what if metaphor is actually the truth? And the rest of it is kind of an illusion. I don't think you use those exact words, but I'm just sort of extrapolating and brainstorming off of what you said, but there's something about the power of metaphor. It lives in the world of sensation. It lives in sensory experience or something. It evokes sensory experience, which evokes living inside the body. It reminds you to be in the body. And as human beings, we have this body, and we're taught to celebrate the mind so much. But metaphor helps us come back to come back to our home in our body.
Yeah, right.
That's where it's more truthful than whatever it's pointing to. I'm trying to grasp at straws here, but I'm trying to make sense of something. Do you have any thought on that?
Yeah.
Too nebulous.
So when we're talking off, camera, we were talking. I was explaining to you how flower essence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got this like really thick book of, I don't know, it has maybe 200 different flower essences. Those, people who don't know what flower essences are, the most common ones are those 13 Bach flower essence. And it's a remedy. And how they make it is it's sort of like homeopathic remedy, but it's a different method. They collect dews from the flower petals, let's say a particular flower petal, and then they believe that it has the vibration, the water has the vibration of that, the flower, and the flower has characteristics. And if that characteristic matches with your emotional state or something, it can be used as remedy. So it, like, a lot of people think it's a woo-woo thing, but anyway, I've known about flower essence for a long time, and moving to Northern California, I realized that Nevada City, Grass Valley in Nevada City, has the flower essence farm. And not only those 13 traditional 13 flower essences, they have hundreds of them, right? So I bought the book, and I was just reading for each flower essence. You know, it can be anything from chamomile, California poppy, just all kinds of different flowers. And it describes the almost like the personality of each flower. And as I was reading it, I just started to feel like, okay, this is really bizarre, because it's true. Like, we see these characteristics in each plant, and we think it's a metaphor, but it actually, like, according to the flower essence understanding, that is really something that, you know, each plant possesses. So that's really the truth. And we're the one who, you know, who I mean, we think that we're using metaphor to describe something, but at the same time, the flowers possess certain characteristics. So I started to get kind of confused, like, wow, when we think something's a metaphor, maybe it could be the other way around. And that we live according to the truth, which is, you know, the nature, or, you know, animal has different characteristics, right? Flowers, plants, different things, the sun and moon, and I guess astrology is the same thing, you can kind of say, you know, where the planets line up. But we live in this truth, and in a sense, like, we're the metaphor or something, you know, against the truth.
Yeah, I mean, even that statement, I go, we're the metaphor, I find there's something about this very profound to me. And I find like I really want to explore that. And I know it sounds like it could be like we're, yeah, it's something very, very profound about that statement. We are the metaphor. Because it's almost like we're looking outside ourselves at everything, but it evokes this other thought that I think a lot of teachings say, and I'm waking up to more and more, that we're only always seeing a mirror of ourselves in other people. You know, what we like, what we don't like, what triggers us, what pleases us, was given. We're only being reminded of something, reminded or experiencing some aspect of ourselves. So we are the metaphor. You know, it's something I just really want to come back to that. If we don't get to like something right now about it, I want to like do something with that. We are the metaphor.
You know what? I remember you said something like how we separate ourselves from something else, right? Like, we separate ourselves from other people, we separate ourselves from nature. So we think that's a metaphor, that's an illusion, that's just a story.
Right.
And that something challenge or, you know, problem happens because we make that distinction, right? When we are actually all intertwined, and it's really the same thing. And then that just seems like that's where that concept of, what is metaphor and what is a truth come from, right? In truth, it's like really the same thing.
Yeah, I think uh, I mean, I know what I was saying, something about the we and the I.
Yeah.
Like the I is the ego, and the I thinks is central, and the I is all about separation, and the we is about connection and interconnection and oneness, and we pay homage to that all the time. Yes, we're all connected. We're all one, but we don't usually experience it. But metaphor allows us to experience being inside something.
Mhm.
Because I think that is what it does. It lets us be something else.
Mhm.
Lets us remember that we are that something else.
Mhm.
We are that thing we call, we are the metaphor.
Right.
We're not separate from that thing. It's not just describing us, it is us.
Mhm.
And somehow we can live inside it when we share a story or parable or anything. So like if this naked truth, and lie, like, and it's so striking to me, you said, you feel it inside yourself. I didn't have an emotional response. I tend to be more drier. And I think that's my journey about not being that much in my body. We talked about the difference between you and me the other week, about how we both tend to be coming at some similar journey, but yours is about feeling so much in your body, and mine is not feeling so much in my body, and trying to come back, and you're not being aware of the feeling, because I think I'm feeling as much, but I'm not aware of, and you're hyper aware. So you need to kind of separate a little bit, and I need to kind of connect with it, and so there's just something about your response to that story versus my response to the story, also probably on a visceral, emotional, physical level, was different.
Mhm.
But something about it brings us both home, brings us closer to our home, maybe. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah. And I think if we kind of bring us back to the topic of listening, in that sun and wind story, we brought that up because, when it comes to learning to listen to others, it's like in our, in our consciousness, we know like listening is important, but we brought that up because a lot of times it is difficult, like in real situations. How do we listen in a difficult situation? And we thought that bringing up story can help us kind of put ourselves in that place of being able to listen, right?
Right.
And I mean, this parable, the thing that you read today too, it's like, how can we use this parable in terms of being skillful, being able to listen deeply to others? Is, listening is not just listening, but there's the conversation going,
Right.
and that naked truth. Sometimes it's hard for people to take in something so naked.
Yeah, or there's just something to bypass the defensiveness that we experience, whatever reasons those we feel defensive, whether it's the naked truth or whether it's something we emotionally identify with so strongly, and it shocks us, or somehow do you soften that?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, when you're talking about, I think we titled the first podcast "Listening Without an Agenda" or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do think there's something about being inside with somebody inside their experience. So that means you can't be having a strategic agenda.
Right.
You're inside, and then I don't know where the metaphor comes in or the storytelling coming in, because maybe the story will come easier. I was just joking or telling you earlier that I was walking today and a kid pranked me this morning, and he pretended to be lost, and he was trying to get my help, but he was pranking me, and I was and then long story short, I said to him, don't do that again. And then I said, do you know the story of the boy who cried wolf? And he didn't, and I didn't really explain it, but it had been interesting to kind of take that connection a little further and have been present somehow more to and just pull that out and kind of connected with them using that, because it could have been an interesting, powerful moment. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was telling you, our son went to Waldorf school, and that's a big thing. So like kindergarten age, 4, 5, 6 years old,
Right.
or the kindergarten age at a Waldorf school, and then 7 years old and up, or grade school. But they, especially for the lower grades, like under grade 4 or something, they always use stories instead of like saying, you're not supposed to do this, you can't do this because of this and this and this, or scientific explanation.
Right.
Rather than that, you just introduce stories or a story, and it just sort of sinks in so much deeper.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, someone like Brene Brown, she's a good storyteller. Just the power of storytellers,
Right.
to not just tell us, oh, this is X and Y. But I don't know. I mean, in terms of just our conversation here today, I don't know where we want to go with it, but I mean, there's several threads, right? It's just back to the deep listening piece, but also the power of storytelling, and also the power of metaphor, and what that really means, why metaphor works, why does story work? I mean, I think that's part of where our conversation is going. Like, there's different aspects of that. For me, I'm like, oh, I wish I had that ability to tell stories and pull it out. If I had the ability to pull out, kind of connections and just spin them. But going back to like the without an agenda, you're present, and then maybe something comes through you. Like for lack of a better word, something channels through you, like it's like as a spoken word, like a poetic interlude, like it just sort of comes forward for you because you're inside this experience with somebody, and you're just present.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing you talk about this, like the person, or well, I want to say it's not the person, it's the dog, my dog, like, animal. If I was talking to my dog, he doesn't understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Of course. Or maybe he does. I don't want to assume that, but he doesn't speak our language.
Right.
He knows some words, what they mean. But if I wanted to sit and talk with him, he would just sit there and then be there and listening to me, and then that can be a metaphor too, right? Like if I'm talking with somebody and I want to be present with somebody, and then just be there and tuning into that other person, the being, could I be like my dog, just be there for this person and listen? What does it like?
Yeah.
Or just I mean, I always go back to the nature thing, right? The trees are always there, flowers are there. And then if I want to connect with them, they're just there unconditionally,
Right.
you know? And yeah, so like for me, when it comes to metaphor stories, that's where I go to, you know, the nature and how that they can do that for me, but it's hard for me to do that with other people.
So that dog and a tree or the forest are listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Their presence for you.
Yeah.
But it's hard to be that presence for others.
Yeah.
But as you know, like the story of the wind and the sun, sort of, and going back to the experience in the body, you experience the visceral experience of the sun, of being the sun.
Mm-hmm.
You bring yourself into that experience. Or even, you know, we were talking earlier about if you're doing some self-soothing and you're, you know, this sort of trying to calm yourself. When you were kind of rubbing your arms with the havening technique and you just slowed it down, I think that could be a great kind of description of the process of, you know, listening, of kind of calming the situation, you know, and bring yourself into your body.
Yeah.
I bring myself into my body. I bring myself into my body, some awareness of my breath and my body, so that I can listen.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of slow myself down,
Right.
and I put myself in a more receptive state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That reminds me of like a tree and a dog, and you know, it feels closer to that than the racing mind of a human being.
You know, I just wonder how much, or if I ever listened to someone like nature listens to me. You know, I try to listen without agenda, or I try to just be there for that person and listen. But I feel like, I'm not saying trying is bad, but I feel like maybe I have never experienced fully to be listening like the sun listens to me or the tree listens to me. And I say that because I remember when I was listening to one of Eckhart Tolle's talk, he said something like, yeah, I was, this woman was having difficulty. She came over to my house, and then I was just there sitting and listening. And you don't even have to listen to what she's saying. Like, the most important thing is to just be, you know, in your body, and in yourself being present, and then just feel my hands, you know, feel my feet, feel my butt touching the chair, and then just like fully be there for that person. And I can't remember if he said that he didn't really remember what she said or anything, but my understanding was that that's what, you know, that's what he was focusing on. And I just thought, I don't think I've ever done that before. It's like I always feel like I have to listen to every word, you know, so that I understand what the other person's saying. But it could be that what the other person is saying is really secondary. You know, the person is upset. I just need to be there and then hold that space for that person, right? So, but that's where I think I kind of have difficulty, because I'm like trying to listen to what the other person's saying, and then I might not be able to get everything what this person's saying, right? Then it gets in my head, and
Right.
then I'm not listening anymore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think you're not alone in that. I can pretty much identify with that either. Too, I think I have moments, when I'm counseling with somebody, I can drop into that. There's moments for sure, but I think there's a fear, whatever the voices are in the head of the ego, whether it's like, oh, I don't understand, I should try to understand everything, or it's like, oh, I have something, I want to make sure I remember to say that, or it's like, oh no, I have so many thoughts, or a judgment, or whatever it is. That's just a journey. I think we're not going to get a perfection, because we're human beings with ego. So we're going to have a lot of voices in our head until we get calmer and calmer. But I had this thought while you were talking that it's almost like what you were describing was the idea of almost like listening to silence, like ability to listen to silence. Like this, be comfortable listening to that level that you hear silence as well as any words. We're used to focusing, like music, you focus on the words, not the but the rest and the spaces in between the pause are just as important. That's what makes the music. And so we as human beings, we're so fixated on our words, we don't actually notice the pauses, right? And we don't think that is equally important, because negative space and positive space are both define the image,
Yeah. Right. Like it almost makes me think, I realize that deep listening is about ourselves being totally grounded, present in the moment. Because then we won't have these thoughts coming in and out. Yeah.
And we're not perfect, so this is a work in progress. And so it's back to the complete awareness piece. You notice those thoughts, you're meditating, for example, but you're listening, and listening is an act of meditation, and you hear these other thoughts, but you're like, okay, I had another thought, I had a judgment, I had a question, I had an energy burst, like, I had something I had to say, but I let it go, and I stayed here in this moment with this person, as present as I could. And whatever then, after they finish speaking and I have something to say, whatever then comes forward naturally, and you didn't forget it, you didn't, it just, whatever comes is what was meant to be said. Right. If you can trust that process, then the conversation can be more honest, and maybe that's where the power of whatever you say comes forward more, right? Because you're integrating, you're truly listening, and then some truth comes to you, a story comes to you, an image comes to you,
Right. It'll be interesting to, I'm sure, a lot of people have done this maybe, but I haven't. But it'll be interesting to sit in front of a flower or a tree with the intent to listen, and see what happens. I have looked at something and be present with it, but it would be interesting to go to my favorite tree and say, you know what, I'm just going to go there, sit, and then I'm going to listen,
Yeah, I mean, you listen and maybe you tune into it in whatever ways that, I know people like if you write or if you meditate or if you draw or whatever act allows you to, if meditation is it, then if moving is it, or whatever, but like to try to connecting and experiencing and being present, all
Mhm.
kind of, but yeah, I think that would be interesting. um there's a lot of folks that, it just reminds me of, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of places we could go, in even terms of, because it's just talking about listening to nature. You've got, this always strikes me. So there's some people who've been so traumatized, there's nothing works really for them except to get out in nature and kind of get almost their parasympathetic systems reset almost. And look at that, that's a powerful way of healing, and we're all being called to that, right? Or not all, but that we need to, in terms of where we are as a planetary species, we all need to get back to some connection with everything,
Mhm.
including the ground and the trees and the soil, and so yeah, listening. Um, it also reminded me of, like I said, there's so many places when we used to conceive this idea of doing this podcast, there's so many directions we could go. And
Mhm.
even, that simple exercise of listening to your own voice points into that direction, because how many times, I mentioned Chloe Goodchild's work, and she actually has a book called Naked Voice. And one of the simple exercises is listening to the sound of your own voice. And you and I have practiced it. So you say your name, Aisha, Aisha, but not say it. We don't put the energy on the saying and the doing, but on the listening, on the receiving of the sound. And how hard is that? How many people have actually listened to the sound of their own voice and 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 not judged it, but listened to it, to experienced it, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of places we can go. There's a and I still really find I'm kind of like that. We are the metaphor. There's something very deep in that for me.
Mhm.
I don't know if you sense it, and you don't have to. I don't.
No, I do sense it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something like it's like a koan.
Yeah.
There's like a riddle, almost like if
Right.
I kind of enter that, and
It's almost like we are asleep, we're dreaming. I mean, we think what's happening is the reality and all that, but it's actually we're asleep, and how the dreams are the reality, you know? I
yeah,
can
yeah,
see it like
yeah,
that too.
yeah, 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 yeah. Like the fixation, even on what I was saying too, like on the word rather than the silence.
Mhm, mhm.
you know and actually we are the metaphor points to like a shared experience of something. It points to something that we are inside of instead of separate from,
Yeah, right.
because we're always looking at everything from, I'm over here and you're over there and that's over there and that's that, and I'm
Mhm,
separate. But when you say, we are the metaphor, it's
mhm,
like uh, both the we and the metaphor point to a togetherness,
mhm.
to a connection.
Yeah. It's isn't it interesting, like say when you talk about, you know, you feel this sort of you feel intrigued about this concept, right? Like, well, what if we're metaphor? And then I don't know if you felt that, but like I felt like I was somehow knowing with that big K, knowing the truth all of a sudden, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
That I just wanted to sit with it in silence.
I had a similar experience, and I can't say it's the exact same, but it was like as if something opened up, and we
Yeah.
were both in there, and that the silence was calling us,
Yeah.
or the silence was calling, and I have to say, so Patricia Albert, if I've spoken about her work, is Evolutionary Collective, but they're about unified consciousness, and about not experiencing it as an individual but together.
Mhm.
And I was having that thought, like, so they say that, or Patricia talks about, people have the individual meditation, spiritual experiences, or these connected experience to all everything, but they're still separate from each other.
Mhm.
And so they're experiencing as individuals. She's talking about a new paradigm where people actually are inside the experiences. They're not describing the experience, they're inside the experience. And they're experiencing the same thing, and they're touching the same thing. So it's it's not like they're separate from it. They're now experiencing the same thing. They're not describing something from a distance. They're both inside this experience, and they're describing it, and they're in the same place. And that is kind of pointing to a unity consciousness.
What's her name?
Patricia Albert.
You have to send me.
Yeah, I will. But yeah, I kind of did the Evolutionary Collective for a year. Everything is costs money, and everything is a commitment. And I without work, I felt I did it for a year, and I appreciate what she's trying to do. But there was definitely a skeptic in me. But also there was a part of me that says, okay, I'm not quite there yet, that I can be here. This is a group of strangers to me. I don't quite feel the intimacy. It would be very interesting to do this with somebody I felt already an intimacy with me. And that actually, our experience just now points to that, to me, that you and I have a trust, we have a history. There's a little bit more that I needed personally to be able to enter that, so I can trust the experience more, so it doesn't seem so woo-woo, Anyway, but there's so many places we can go.
Right. Let me let the dog out.
Yeah. Maybe Star wants to join in the conversation. That's intriguing.
He's going, these two women are just like, yeah.
No, they were talking about dogs and listening. I want to listen.
I'm done listening to you guys.
So I wonder, what do you think? Should we wrap for today?
Sure.
Is there something that you want to end with? Any thoughts?
Yeah. I think it would be really interesting to, pursue that metaphor thing, where the metaphor.
Yeah. I think deep listening and we are the metaphor, I might be this, and actually listening with, and presence in our bodies, and listening to our own voices. And like these are all related. They're all related. It's all connected. It's all connected. And you can come out, and this is also points to the nature of this whole endeavor of being human. There's so many people, and we're all like trying to figure out something, but everybody has a little of their own angle towards something, and we're all looking, but we all have a little bit of a different place where we're coming from, but we're pointing in the same direction.
Yeah.
We're trying to find ourselves somewhere. Yeah.
And I'd like to encourage the listeners. We just started this series, so we just have 1 or 2 podcasts. But if somebody was to find our podcast, we would like to hear their comments, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'd
Want them
like
to
you to
share.
join our conversation. We both love people and enjoy doing this. So it would be great to have your comments and yours if you want to subscribe.
Yes.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thanks, Aisha.
Thank you.